Okay.
All right. So this is Kristen Marcus Hempstead, and I am here tonight with Casey James. And I am fortunate enough to have a chapter in the same book as this amazing woman. And she is here to talk with us tonight about grief.
Thank you, Kristen.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, as you guys know, I'm a medium, and I've really been kind of stepping into that medium gift. And I work with a lot of people who end up having, issues with grief. And it's amazing how, Casey, you and I got introduced, and talking with you and looking at your beautiful website. I always thought grief was more related to the death of a loved one, but it sounds like grief can come from many things. It can come from all sorts of different things. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what you've learned over the years about what grief comes from and what that looks like for people?
Yes, I sure can. And excuse me, that's very common for people to just associate grief with death. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right? We know that.
Right.
But grief is really the normal and natural emotional reaction to loss of any kind of loss. So when you start thinking about your life, just from the time you were born, the things of loss, I mean, they are numerous. Divorce, yes, and losing a job and losing somebody you love. Those are kind of big ones. But then you start thinking about things like loss of trust, loss of safety, loss of moving. Like when you move, that's grief producing because
Interesting.
grief is also, and this is defined by the grief recovery method, but it's beautiful. It's the conflicting feeling caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So when you think about that, moving, especially if you're young, or even now, if you're grown and you have to move, you're leaving something that has been normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's been your familiar pattern of behavior. Now you're going to uproot and go do something else. So yes, all of those things, losses and big gigantic changes are grief producing, and they're normal.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us have been ill-equipped to deal with it. Number one, just like you said, most people think it's about death, so they don't even associate these other life incidents with grief. And then the other thing is, there isn't a lot of information that is just widely known about what to do with it and how it looks. And, we've all heard of the 7 stages of grief. That was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying, world famous. But most people on the planet don't know that she wrote those 7 stages in regards to somebody that was dealing with impending death. So they make perfect sense for that. But we adopted that and said, these are the things you need to do. This is how it's going to happen. And it was never intended for that.
Right. Denial, anger, bargaining. Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think grief can probably come from a time when something is going well. It's like, like moving to a new job, like moving to a new city. But, grief can come from that as well.
Yeah.
You should be happy. Yeah, absolutely. And
again, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say again, it's the conflicting feelings, not bad, not good, conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behaviors. So yes, marriage, which you want to be doing, you want to go spend your life with this person that you adore, but you've been single. And if you haven't been living together, let's just say, or even if you have been, there's, all of a sudden this person belongs to you forever. Having children, having children, the same thing. You want it badly, but it changes drastically. And so people feel bad if they have these feelings of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I like this so much.
Right. Right. Oh my God, that's interesting. And so what would grief look like for somebody? Let's just say, kind of like you mentioned, loss of trust, like a breakup, or like childhood abuse or abusive spouse, or the death of a loved one. We kind of know what a death of a loved one, quote, should feel like, but how may grief kind of manifest itself for, like, the average Joe like us?
Okay, well, the thing is, it's going to pretty much be the same basic feelings, behaviors always. I mean, if you've lost anything, but loss of trust, just specifically, we're talking about that because anytime you've lost anything, you're going to feel sad. I mean, you know that. You will feel sad and you may feel angry depending on the situation, but those are normal.
Right.
And those feelings are just feelings, as you know, and they have no power. A feeling has no power except the power we give it. But what happens with people when they're dealing with loss or with grief, they don't really understand it, and nobody's really told us. We grow up and we learn how to drive a car and we learn how to do all these things in life, but nobody really tells us about how to deal with loss. So we take it most of the time and hold it in. So then it's going to affect us physically. Then it's going to start, sleeplessness and changes in appetite, of course, stress levels. It can take a big physical toll on you because, the things that don't get expressed in us, turn into not good things for our bodies. So, really, no matter what kind of loss you've experienced, if you can't move through it, you're going to end up with the same kind of, it's going to be like a tea kettle, and those things are going to build up. And the minute somebody pushes that button, let's say it's loss of trust.
Right.
And that might have been from when you were 6 years old. Well, no, you didn't do anything with it. So the minute that your spouse or your best friend does something to just tap that button, off it goes, and it seems like it comes out of nowhere. No, it's not out of nowhere. It's out of your whole stockpile of things that you have been holding in.
Yeah. And so it's not like that interaction with that coworker. It's basically something's tapped on, something pushed your buttons that really just kind of brought everything to the surface. And so, like, when we're dealing with grief, I'm kind of getting to a solution. I mean, do you have to like relive everything all over again, or okay?
And that's why the counseling thing I have, because sometimes you can even become addicted to counseling. I mean, we end up, one of the things we do to not feel anything, and that's just, are these short-term energy releasing behaviors. That's grief recovery method term, but it's STERB, STERB, short-term energy releasing behaviors. Those things include, of course, drugs, alcohol, but shopping, anger could be one, just doing anything. If you play video games or whatever that would be, but it's all of that stuff trying to make its way out. And that is that's so normal for us to do. And so I forgot your question.
You answered it. You're great. It's basically, it's like, how do people, cope with different things like this? You answered it just perfectly. You're so funny. So, well, it's like, I know. So do people, I just get so engaged in your stuff. So do people have to relive and talk about all their past, because I work with people.
Yeah, so that's going with it. So that, you keep going over that stuff, and every time it comes up, you stuff it back down. So we haven't really gone anywhere. So people assume, and I just had a conversation with somebody about this. I'm glad you asked this, because people assume that if we are going to talk about it and deal with it, we're going to go back there and we're going to make it do all these awful things, and it's going to bring up everything and blah, But there's only one way to get over it, and that is to go through it. So you have to do some work, but it doesn't have to be like the course I teach is 7 weeks, one time a week. Yes, there's homework. It's 8 weeks for the group, 7 weeks for individual, but no, it gives you tools. I mean, there are things you can do, steps you can take to help yourself. And that's what I love about the grief recovery method, because it gives you actual tools and not this unending talking about it forever and ever and ever, because all that does is increase your anxiety over it, you know?
Yes.
You never move beyond it, because choosing to go beyond it is really that. It's a choice. You know, you have to decide, is this what I want for the rest of my life? Or is this, you know, something I am ready to be rid of? And, you know, a death of a loved one, you're not done with them. I mean, and death is the hard one, because people, understandably so, you know, you love somebody, and when they leave, it feels bad to get over it. But it's not that, it's the pain that you don't want to live with. You want to remain the happy memories is what you want.
Right, right. So you seem to, know a lot about grief. And have you always been a grief counselor, or what did you start off with?
No, I haven't. I did for a couple of years. Yeah, my whole life career was accounting, and just kind of funny, you know. I never thought, number one, I was going to be an accountant, and number two, ever thought I would be anything, you know, doing with grief. So, but I love this work, and it is in my heart, and my life led me to here. So I don't think I really picked it.
Yeah. If you're comfortable, which I'm sure you are, I know my family was very, very touched by your story. My husband, just lost his father, and when we listened to your story, it really put grief in perspective. Would you share with the people on the phone a little about your history and how you got from where you were at to what happened to where you are now?
I will do that. And, you know, it's so funny. It's almost like I need to tell it frontwards and backwards, because it seems like my life started and then I went back and looked at it all. But
right.
I was raised in California. I grew up in a large family, a lot of siblings, and with a pretty violent father and just a lot of dysfunction, as many, many of us did. And then I moved to Texas on a whim. My mother was originally from Texas, and I just woke up one day with the feeling, I mean, truly, I'm going to move to Texas. And so I moved. And then my husband had children, had a great life, had my, great accounting career. And then one day I decided that I was going to take a leave of absence at a company I'd been working for 17 years. And I was very high in the company. And they're like, what? You want to take a leave of absence? I go, yeah. And I had worked many, many hours, but long story short, took 4 weeks off. I came back, and they had given my job away. And I was devastated. You talk about grief.
Wow.
I mean, out of 100 employees, I was probably in the top 10 people in the company. It was not, I never had a minute of strife. So that was life-changing for me. That was huge. I just could not get over it. But the very next day, somebody called me and asked me if they could hire me to help them train some accounting staff. And that one incident started my own business. But the other part, about a year later, my daughter died in a car accident. And she was pregnant with my grandson, and our first grandchild. But the cool thing about that story is that I worked, 50, 60 hours a week on average. And I made a lot of money, and we had great life. We got vacations and all kinds of wonderful things from the company. I'm not complaining. But, she went and fell in love and wanted to have a wedding. And if I had been living the same life, I wouldn't have had that experience. So I got to spend the last year of her life, being the mom of a pregnant daughter and just having a wedding and just all of it. It was so wonderful. At the core, I didn't know at the time, like all of this was lining up. So, and then after that experience, her death just, I have a hard time with the words, but it destroyed me in the moment. I mean, it just really it was so bad that I couldn't believe it. I mean, the night that I found out, I did not believe it. I did not believe that the people that were in my house were believing this story. Nobody had seen her. I mean, I hadn't seen her. My son-in-law came upon the accident, but I didn't see her. So how could all these people believe something so ridiculous? I mean, how it was just so
Mass
ridiculous.
delusion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and I don't know that anybody could really understand how true that was for me. It was true. It was true that that was not true. And it took me the rest of the night and probably to the next day to even believe it. I had to see her. I had to see her to know that it was true, and it was the next day. So that right there was probably the largest shift in my familiar pattern of behavior. You know, I was kind of a control freak, accounting people kind of are, and you know, I just was so knocked off my game that it felt like I got to start over. I didn't feel like it at the time, but that's really now. And I had lost my father 10 years before that. My father had committed suicide, and I thought that was the worst thing that it could ever happen. And there was no comparison. I mean, that was horrid. And it was such different experiences, because with my father, you know, I really, I kind of felt not guilty. I felt his guilt. I kind of like took his guilt on or something. I felt like I needed to.
Yeah, well, like from his past of drinking and abusive behavior. So you had a father that was abusive. You had a job that was great, but then that got pulled away from you. And then your daughter and your unborn grandchild gets killed in a car wreck. I mean, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So it was sort of like, you know, it was the horrible story. It was like the perfect storm. It was like everything came to that point right there, and I was on the ground, done. I mean, there was nothing. I had nothing left of myself, and now I see that as the greatest gift ever, because if you can get out of your own way, the possibilities are endless. I mean, I know it sounds foreign to somebody, especially if they've lost somebody they love, but it's the truth. And I just had to start over. And so I would just say, I would go out my door and say, how am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And I get no answer, you know, and I would just like, okay, every day I would do it again. And I would say, okay, this is supposed to be something. And I started getting answers. I'm like, okay, then let me tell another story. Let me tell a story of not what I lost, but what I didn't lose. I didn't lose those years with her. I didn't lose, you know what I'm saying? It was a shift in the words I spoke. And when I changed my words, my world started to change.
So when you changed your words, your world started to change. And I remember when I heard you speak the first time, I think you said, things happen, but suffering. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's what I started to realize, was that we can't avoid anything in life. When I go and I look back over the history of my life, I can't change those things, especially something, you know, you can't change anything, period. Whether I did it, whether somebody else did it, you can't reverse those things.
Right.
You are left with, okay, now what? You know, what are you going to do? Because pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a complete choice. I mean, you decide.
Yep.
This is what you want to do. And that might sound harsh to people, but it's the truth. I mean, when it boils right down to it, let's just say my father beat me up. Can I fix that? I can't change it. At the time, I couldn't do anything about it. It happened. It's over. Now, that doesn't mean the feeling didn't happen and it wasn't a horrible incident, but, you know, you're choosing, if you choose suffering, you are choosing to give one incident your life. Think about that. Think about it. You're going to give away your life to something that happened, but we do it all the time. You know, we do for small things like somebody pulls out in front of you in traffic and you turn your whole day upside down because of that. We're so willing to just give away our happiness and to give away our joy. And it is a choice. You know, if you want to suffer, you are free to do so. But my gosh, there's a lot of life. And that's what happened. I started thinking, wait, I got a life to live. You know, I was given a life. And I'm going to choose to throw it away, or I'm going to choose to keep it and make the most of it and try to make something important out of something so important. My daughter's death was important.
Yes,
you know,
she was important.
And so how better to honor somebody than to do something important with it? And this feels important to me. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's like you had childhood crap, you had work crap, you have this losing your daughter. I hate to say lost because no one's ever lost.
Yeah, that's okay, I get it.
Yeah, but you get it. So, and how you've been able to make that choice for yourself, but then also put yourself in a position to help other people. Does that ever drag you down, or does that give you strength? So for me,
it gives me strength, you know, and to leave a very successful accounting career to try to go do this was another big shift. I decided that even if and I remember at my daughter's funeral, they went to a little private Christian school in Bernie, and they were just the most wonderful people in the world. They shifted her life to just beautiful, beautiful people. And at the funeral, his name is Bubba Tracy. Well, his name's Walter Tracy, but everybody called him Bubba. But anyway, he said that when we opened this school, that we had no idea how it was going to work out. And we said if we saved one student or made a difference in one student's life, and he said that was Jessie, my daughter.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, like, that was such a big statement and really touched me. But I felt the same way once I decided to do this. I thought, you know what, if one person can move beyond their suffering, if one person can get unstuck, then that's all I'm going to worry about is just that one person. That one person is the world, because that person will be looked at by other people who are stuck. And then that one person has one person, you know what I'm saying? And then
it's a ripple effect. It's a ripple effect. Yeah. And what I love about you is you're putting something out to the universe, and you're not expecting something to come back to you. I'm putting it out there because, you know, I'm putting it out there because I was brought here. And I know we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to get kicked off, but I know you were telling me a story about how you reluctantly walked into a James Van Praagh session. He sought you out, and he connected with you. He was adamant, connected with your daughter, and he knew the name of a poem you wrote.
Yes, that was amazing. So just a few nights after, and I wasn't a writer before, I'll talk fast, but a few nights after she died, I was just sitting in my living room. It was pitch dark, and I was just in that phase of trying to figure out who I was. I would sit at night, I couldn't sleep. And this poem, I had the urge to get paper and pen. I wrote this poem, and it was called Letter from Heaven. When I read it, it was like she had written me a letter. And I was just mesmerized. So, yeah, then you go 6 years later, I go to Phoenix to go see Wayne Dyer, and I didn't even know who James Van Praagh was. I didn't know anybody. Walked in there, somebody in a packed stadium of 1,200 people, somebody had a seat like 10 rows back and said, here, sit here. And then it was on, boy. When he came, it was amazing. And he told me, you know, does that mean anything? At the very end of the reading, he said the words letter from heaven. And he jumped off his stool, and he goes, now you're freaking a psychic out, because he said, right before I came down here tonight, I was in my hotel room, and I'm writing a book. I'm on the last chapter, and the very last thing I wrote, he said, I walked to the door, came back, and I wrote letters from heaven. And he walked out, and he said, I want that poem in the book. So he did. Like, that was really something else. My life has just been a series of amazing things once I opened up that door.
Once you made that choice, and the grief recovery method has really helped you and helps a lot of the clients that you work through.
It's a fantastic program. And if all the stuff that's available out there, because it's concise, it's, you know, and it gives you tools for life. Everybody that I have taken has gone through it, has not only helped them personally, but it's helped them help the people in their life, just learning more about grief and what it really isn't and what it is.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, so it's the Grief Recovery Method, and if people want to get in touch with you, just go to CaseyJames.com or?
Yes, they can just go on there. And, you know, if you have a group, Kristen, like in Austin that would like to do a group, maybe we could do a special price. You know, it's one time a week, you know, it's a couple hours a night, and there's homework in between, but it's fantastic.
No, I love that. I love that. Wonderful. Well, Casey, I think I'm going to have you back again. I'm going to ask some of my core people like what they'd like to hear about, but you're just so engaging. And again, you just your presence just really helped our family, helped calm us, helped give us peace. We're like, holy crap, if this woman can live through all this stuff, you know what? God's going to make it. It's all going to
be okay. It's going to be okay, everybody.
Yeah. But pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. And let me tell you, when I learned to turn things around, it's amazing how your life just goes up. It's all about choice.
It does. Amen to that.
Okay. Well, we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much, Casey. And I would love to have you come back again. And I think you and I live pretty close to each other, so we'll have to have coffee sometime.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, sweetie. Thanks for calling, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.